Thank you, Jonathan. How is everyone? Good. I am very happy to come to Albany. It's true. No, it's true. My wife and I met in the Adirondacks, and so even a glimpse of 87 North, and I get very nostalgic and happy. So it's a little daunting when you, as Jonathan said, oh, we're going to find somebody from outside, the state to come in and fly in and, say some wise words. So it's a little daunting when you're asked to speak to a group of people who know intimately and live every day the challenges and issues that I'm being asked to tee up for you. So I recognize that many of you have deep knowledge of many of the things that I'm going to be quickly running through, because this is that kind of a group, and it's exciting to see so many of you here. It's particularly daunting when the challenges are significant, long-standing, and when there's no silver bullet that you can just pull out and say, so here's what you got to do. Which is the case when it comes to improving outcomes for community college students in New York State and New York City. That at the same time, I'm excited to be here to kick off your discussion, because actually the time is right for this conversation. We know much more now than we did 10 years ago about the nature of the challenges facing community colleges and their diverse groups of students. We know much more about some potential solutions. We know much more about certain things that don't work very well. And there's a broad consensus emerging about overall strategies and directions for significant change that look promising, that are being tested in institutions, in states around the country, and that New York City and New York State can learn from. So I'm excited that because this is the right time to be taking bolder actions at the state level, the system level, the institutional level, informed by a past decade of national reform efforts. So I'm going to make a few points to start off and set the stage for the deeply knowledgeable and engaged panel that you have following me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of community colleges in New York. I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges. I'm going to talk a little bit about emerging strategies and where New York State is on some of these strategies. And I'm going to end with some concrete steps that state systems and institutions can take that I hope the panel will elaborate on and the discussion will go even further on. A lot of the data that I'm going to present are going to come from two places. One, the Center for Urban Future's excellent new paper called Completion? Yeah. And second, and Tom knows that I do this all the time, the unbelievable research and wealth of research from the Community College Research Center at Teachers College. So here we go. So starting point, the point that Jonathan made right off the bat, which was community colleges are critically important to New York State and to New York City and to the growth and vitality of New York's communities. They are the fastest growing segment of higher education in New York. Part of this fast growth is cyclical in the time of the recession and after, with people going back, but part of it is secular and long-term. Part of it has to do with rising higher ed costs, making community colleges more attractive to populations that might not have looked at community colleges before. And the kinds of occupational programs that community colleges offer are increasingly attractive to students who are thinking ahead about their future at a time when they see a really rough labor market. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that clearly, but community colleges have a huge role in the production of graduates for a lot of occupations that are growth engines for middle-skilled jobs in the United States and in New York. And I don't know if any of you have seen this recent research by the Brookings Institution, Jonathan Rothwell, looking at what he calls the hidden STEM economy. Says if you define STEM as a STEM job is any job that requires specialized skill in science, technology, engineering, and math, you're looking at 20% of the jobs in the country, and you're looking at 50% of those jobs not needing a BA. So suddenly, you're looking at 50% of those jobs requiring less than a BA for students, for people to get those jobs. And where's most of that training located, or where is it coming from? A lot of it is in the community colleges, in credentials, degree programs, customized training, et cetera. And this is probably more complicated a slide than it's worth right now, but the main point is look at the associate's degree bubble. And the red line through the middle is the median lifetime earnings of those who earn a bachelor's. So above that red line, 28%, so between a quarter and a third of community college credential earners are making more than the median of a BA earner, a BA recipient. So this, what Jonathan said about platforms for mobility, this is an indication of how community colleges are indeed, for many, a platform for mobility, and can be. And the Center for Urban Future report that I just referenced estimates the value to the state of an increase in community college graduation rate in New York State by 10%. They look at, they do some estimates. Tom, I guess, did this work, but Tom Hilliard. Boost to the state economy, increase in the annual incomes, increase in economic activity because of that, increase in taxpayer investments going towards graduates rather than dropouts. So this is significant if you can up that graduation rate across the community colleges in New York City and New York State. You all know, and many of you are involved in some or all of these different roles and functions that community colleges play in their communities: occupational degrees and credentials, lower cost transfer pathways, adult basic ed and GEDs and ESL for those students who need more basic skills before they can succeed in a college program, customized training, workforce development, particularly important in a lot of the rural communities where the community colleges play that kind of economic development role, and dislocated worker training as well. But, as Jonathan also pointed out, and as you all know, the potential that community colleges can have in their communities, in your communities, is not being realized to the full potential. Too many students stop in quickly and then give up quickly. Too many students drop out without a credential. Too many students who want to transfer never do. It's true at SUNY, it's true at CUNY. These are 6-year completion rates. It's also true, as you well know, across the country. This is not a New York phenomenon or a New York problem. And just if you wanted to add one other piece. So after 6 years, you've got that across the state in New York, 35% with an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree having started in community college. 5% are still enrolled after 6 years, which in itself is kind of it has some optimism to it in the boy, these people just keep persisting, but it's also a sad statistic, really. And 60% have dropped out, transferred, or could not be tracked. One point that I want to make, and that is made well in the report, is there's a lot of variation within New York State, right? The top 5 performers in terms of completion rates in New York might be at 45% and the bottom 5 at 24%. There are a lot of reasons for that, which we're not going to parse out now. And New York State's graduation rate compared to other states, there are a number of large states, Illinois, Wisconsin, Florida, where graduation rate is higher, and you could parse that out, and there are whole dissertations related to that. The reason I bring that up is that there is variation, and when there's variation, it means you can do things differently, and you can make changes that allow you to imagine that it's not going to be the same number year after year after year. So there's a growing consensus from the research, much of it done pioneering work, really, by Tom Bailey and the Community College Research Center, to get a handle on what actually is going on for students in community colleges from the moment they walk in to the moment they leave, either with a credential or without a credential. And I want to, and there's plenty of obstacles facing students. I'm going to just mention two because I think these two are somewhat foundational, and they're also things that will be talked about later by the panel. The first is obviously the problem of developmental education. And I don't actually mean by that the problem of poor preparation, which of course is a huge problem as this slide shows. But I actually mean the problem of developmental education itself. The problem of long standalone sequences, of misaligned curricula, of poorly predictive placement and assessment tools, of all of which contribute to a huge amount of attrition and lack of success for those students who start underprepared for college-level work. And it's not actually clear on balance that whether developmental education is a support for or an obstacle for completion overall. And that's a serious, serious challenge. So the first challenge, getting to college-level courses and programs. You know, it's one thing to walk in the door, it's another thing to walk in the door and be able to take the program that you wanted to take so that you could change your life and improve your life chances. Second problem, though, is not just at the entry, but all the way through a community college experience. The bewildering number of choices that students have and the minimal amount of support they get for making those choices well. And this is particularly problematic for those who are first generation in college students who don't really have a clue what it means to be in college and think that whatever, you know, they just don't have the tools, right? They don't, their family hasn't given them that. So I'm going to get to the chart in a second, but one of Tom's colleagues, Judith Scott Clayton, did an incredibly interesting paper in which she concluded, and with this sentence, for many students at community colleges, finding a path to a degree is the equivalent of navigating a shapeless river on a dark night. You know, which is compelling, and it's terrifying, right? I mean, this is a serious problem, and what this chart shows you, these are the highest educational outcomes achieved within 5 years, by year, first year, second year, third year, by the year that the student first entered a program of study or a concentration. So what does that mean? In the first, if you successfully in your first year say, I'm a health student, I'm an allied health student, or I'm a welding student or whatever, or I'm a business student. If you pick that in your first year and you actually started taking the right courses and you started down that path, you have much greater likelihood of completing. I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's true. You have much greater chance of actually completing, earning the degree, getting out and getting the job that you want than if you wait to the second year, the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year. So for those who entered in year one in this cohort, in this study, entered a program in year one, over 50% actually earned a credential or transferred to a four-year school. If you waited and you didn't pick your program of study until the second year, that was already down to 37%, and then down from there. So it's really a critical challenge, not just to deal with the front end and developmental ed and placement and how to deal with that, but it's also critical to how do you help students make their way all the way through first picking the right program, staying in the right program, moving quickly and efficiently through their program to their end result, because their end result is not to be in school. Their end result is to get out and to continue their life. So that leads to a kind of consensus that is emerging around what are some of the priorities for community college reform. One, obviously, is better preparation, and you can't minimize the importance of working more effectively with K-12 systems and aligning what students are learning in K-12 and how they're learning it with the post-secondary. And we're going to hear Stan Litow, I'm sure, is going to be talking about this some in his panel. But second, or you can see there are other priorities as well, priorities that are important once they walk into the community college. Reducing dramatically the amount of standalone remediation and the long sequences of remediation. Integrating basic skills more effectively with the college courses and with the college programs so that you're doing math. If you're going to be in welding, you're doing math that makes sense for welding. If you're going to be in the social sciences, you're doing math that makes sense for the social sciences. Proactive, better advising and counseling so people can find their way to programs more quickly, more efficiently, and so that they stay on course as well. And third, and finally, just streamlining the whole thing. You know, in some ways, the community college institutions have, you know, they are incredibly successful access institutions. But access means you just come in and we'll give you something. But as you shift to how do you become an incredibly successful, incredibly effective success institution, then success has to be defined in terms of what are you getting, how you're getting out of this institution with skills, with credentials, with connections that enable you to improve your life situation. So that requires the kinds of reorientation that you see on, listed in these kinds of priorities for reform. And the truth is, New York City, New York State, there are a lot of exemplary models that do exactly this. Some of you are sitting right here, the Gutman Community College, the ASAP program, PTEC, the LaGuardia GED Bridge, workforce partnerships that are very tied to their employers. The CUF paper mentions a couple of distinctive ones in Monroe and Hudson Valley. But as you well know, these are exemplary models, and the question and challenge for all of us is how do you get those from being the exception to being the routine way in which we organize community college experience for students, the way in which we organize relationships with employers, the way in which we organize connections to the K-12 system. So I have a few ideas, and I hope and I trust that the panel will have other ideas and that you have other ideas as well about what are some of the important things that can be done right now to help New York State not just join what I think is a growing national movement, but maybe leapfrog some of the states that have moved down some of these roads early and to move more quickly to more effective strategies. So the first one seems extremely obvious. There should be a high visibility public commitment from the state, from the governor, from the system leadership, that completion, student success is what these institutions and what these systems are about, and where their emphasis for improvement is going to be. It's obvious, but there's a lot of competing interests and a lot of competing commitments that in any state. And so how do you get that in New York State? How do you move towards that? That's your, part of your job, I think, and your challenge. But of course, a public commitment is much more effective if there are some incentives and some incentives for institutions and students to act differently and to act in ways that align with the goal of greater success. Many states, as you know, have turned to performance-based funding. New York State started down that road with like $5 million of a little job fund last session. I think there's a lot of debate about pros and cons of performance-based funding, but one thing it does is it focuses people's attention on success and on performance and on outcomes, and it can also be a good thing in terms of your relationship with the legislature, because the legislature says, oh, these guys are serious. They want to be efficient with public dollars, and that's a good thing. But there are other ways as well. Massachusetts, which has a vision project that's been in place for the past few years around community colleges and higher ed in general, they have a performance incentive fund that is a competitive grant fund. It's about $7 million a year. It's not that much, but it's tied to the goals of the Vision Project. So it's tied to the state's interests and the state's priorities. And then it says, we're going to give out grants for innovation and creativity, evidence-based in those areas, and every year they do it, and it helps them move the institutions forward some. Third, there need to be ways to help the institutions build their own capacity to drive change. You know, as you who are working in community colleges might, are well aware, the institutional research capacity is probably pretty stretched. The advising capacity is certainly stretched. But there are ways that the state can help strengthen institutional research capacity, can help with spreading the use of mapping and advising technologies that are coming online now, and use its professional development, the system's professional development venues to just keep pushing and pushing, pushing all in the same direction. In some decentralized states like Michigan, Arkansas, a new entity called the Student Success Center has formed, been created with some foundation money, but these centers are staffed. They're lean and mean, but they're staffed, and their goal is to say there's a lot of stuff happening out in our state. Let's align them. Let's align all of these success initiatives. Let's make them add up to more than the sum of the parts, and let's drive towards a policy agenda and an institutional change agenda that is coherent, even though we may not have a system that can do that from the top. And that involves the faculty and the leadership of the institutions in setting out that agenda. And finally, although this is at every state, New York too, is going to have to address issues of the balance between tuition, state support, financial aid, and that's kind of a different level of discussion than some of the other things I mentioned, but I thought I should put that in there. So I hope that sets the stage for your discussion, your panel, your conversation, and I thank you.